Aaron Antrim and Jake War with Trillium Solutions. Aaron is the founding principal of Trillium Solutions, a software and consulting firm that helps 300 transit agencies make their services easy for customers to understand and use. He developed the first web-based application for maintaining GTFS data. Aaron is also a co-director of Mobility Data, a nonprofit project to standardize data for mobility as a service. He called Portland, Oregon home. Jake War's career in transit has focused on the rider experience and how it is impacted by access to services, clarity of information, and system performance. His 6 years experience in the field includes serving as the Title VI program administrator at TriMet, managing the Columbia Gorge Express bus service for the Oregon DOT, and most recently, joining the team at Trillium. Jake has a Master's of Urban and Regional Planning from Portland State University and a Bachelor's of Sociology from the University of Utah. With that, it is our great pleasure that we now turn our webinar over to them. Take it away, Aaron and Jake.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Excellent. My name's Aaron Antrim. Thank you for the introduction, Lisa and Jamie. And thank you everyone for attending today's webinar and taking some time out of your busy workday. Our topic today is standards-based data foundations for both passenger-facing and planning applications. And we're going to talk about what standards-based data is, how that's data that can be used by many different kinds of applications, and tell the origin story of GTFS and talk about GTFS applications. So I'm assuming that many people have heard of GTFS or probably use it at their agency. It's the General Transit Feed Specification, and it's the best example of standardized data, basically standardized transit data that we have for the world. We're going to talk about the motivations for that data standard, what it is, what the data contains, the applications that use that data, and the lessons we've now learned from about 10 years of GTFS practices, and how you can apply some of those lessons to get more out of your GTFS data. And we're going to talk about how we can build on top of GTFS, how applications provide real-time data and add demand-responsive transit to trip planners, and how ridership data can be associated with GTFS. And please put in questions as you have them or at the end, because we'd love to take any questions you have on this topic. Let's move to the origin of GTFS. How did this happen and how did we get here? Well, if we go back about 10 years, or actually more at this point, almost 13 years, we go to the time without GTFS when it was more difficult to plan transit services. And so let's look at the process for planning a transit trip using maps and timetables. I work backwards from a destination to my origin, find the transfer point between them, and then similarly work backwards across the timetables. And so that ends up being about 7 steps. We're all transit professionals, so that seems obvious to us. But a University of South Florida study found that about half of people mess up one of these steps. And those are all people who are not going to be able to use transit. So seeing this problem, an IT manager named Viviana McHugh at TriMet here in Portland asked the question, why isn't it as easy to get transit directions as driving directions in 2005? And she contacted a number of firms, a number of companies, MapQuest, if you remember back in the early days of web mapping, and Yahoo Maps, and Google Maps got in touch with her and said, we want to add transit directions to Google Maps. We think that will be very useful for our customers. So in 2005, that launched. And it launches a labs product with data from TriMet. And this is important. This fulfilled on Google's mission to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. So where does GTFS fit into this? Google couldn't just add transit directions without some data about that network. And they made the choice of defining a data standard that could be used to describe that transit network. So this is where we get the general transit feed specification. And it's a lightweight format that describes stops, routes, schedules, and fares. And crucially, they chose to license this in a way that other applications besides Google can use. This is not Google's specification. This is a specification that can be used by any party. And that's why there are hundreds of applications that use GTFS data. And we're going to talk about those applications today. So those applications include customer-facing applications like Google Maps and now many other apps. They include now real-time applications, real-time passenger information that's connected with automatic vehicle location. And they include planning tools that allow planners to understand and oversee the network and understand who's being served and how. And one thing I want to talk about here is that it's really useful to be using the same data in all these applications. It creates efficiency and it promotes accuracy, because if you're using the same data that you're showing to customers that you're in your planning and vice versa, that's more eyes on the data, and it's enforcing accuracy in that data. So first, we're going to talk about these applications in this order. First, we're going to talk about customer-facing applications. There's of course Google Maps that's used by hundreds of millions of people around the world. There's Apple Maps. There's Bing Maps. There's the Transit app, and there's Move It, and there's many other applications. If you have a favorite application that we're not mentioning, please put it into the Q&A. We want to talk a little bit about the Transit app. This is an app that includes rideshare, that includes bike share, and of course, it includes transit, since it's called the Transit app. And so you can look at it at transit.app. It's free for users to download, and it's free for agencies to participate if you have high quality, standardized GTFS data and real-time data, and we'll talk about that in a second. For organizations that participate in their partner program, which is also free, it's possible to get analytics about who's using the app, or not who's using the app, but how many people are using the app, and some insights into what people want out of your transit network. And please email us if you want more information on this program later on, if you want to participate in the Transit app, and we can connect you with them. Continuing our scan, because I think it's useful to look at the novel ways in which GTFS is being used. Rome to Rio. This is at rometorio.com, combines air and ground transportation to show efficient itineraries involving buses, trains, and planes. GTFS can also be used by an agency itself in its official information. And so what we're showing here is a map of the network, the transit network for Tahoe's North Shore. This map includes layers. It includes a transit layer, and it also includes layers for bike paths and trails. This map is based on an interactive map product that Trillium offers. And so if you have GTFS data and you want an interactive map that allows people to explore the transit network in context, please get in touch with us. that data can be ingested into your own systems. Similarly, that data can also be used to efficiently build timetables automatically. These are screen reader ready accessible timetables that are ready to post on your website. And when you update your GTFS, well, then the timetables are updated on the GTFS. There's an open source piece of software that generates these timetables. Please get in touch if you're interested. Now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jake, who's going to talk more about how to unlock value in these applications.
Thanks, Aaron, and hi, everybody from the West Coast to the East. So one thing that we've learned through our experience with GTFS is the importance of accuracy in the data. I've got an example here that I decided to pick on West Virginia because I felt like there must be some sort of rivalry between you guys and them. And there's a system, it's the East Panhandle Transit Authority, and I was just taking a look at their GTFS, their transit directions in Google Maps that is supported by GTFS, and what they have listed on their website. So you can see here that on their website, their route list has a line 10 that's called Berkeley Medical Center, but then in the trip planning, it's actually referred to by a different name, the South Martinsburg route. And this is just an example of where if you are a rider and you're planning a trip via Google, that could be a very confusing experience if you're new to the system. Say you're on the ground and you're trying to get to Berkeley Medical Center, you're expecting a line 10 and a bus shows up, or you're expecting the South Martinsburg route and a bus shows up and says something different than what you pulled up on Google. That can be a confusing experience. It can even turn off riders to either riding transit or using trip planning tools because they're not accurate. And so that's not useful for planning trips. A good reference for those of you who want to look at GTFS best practices, that includes a lot more lessons that we've learned. Go to gtfs.org/best practices. That's listed there. So in the end, the big lesson, the big takeaway for us really is that quality matters. Consistency in the data and having that line up with what's happening on the ground is crucial for GTFS to work. So another piece of this whole puzzle is something that we highly recommend is that making data open. It is a great way to increase exposure to your system, to make sure that apps who consume GTFS can easily get that data. So we've provided a couple repositories of GTFS data here, transitfeeds.com and transit.land, and a list of some of the areas in Virginia that provide their data openly, and then it can be accessed by anyone. You can go to these sites, look at agencies around the country, look at their data, and then it can be used by developers for a variety of purposes. And all in all, that makes for a much better, a much more complete environment for trip planning through different apps. So in addition to the customer-facing tools, like Aaron mentioned, GTFS really supports some planning tools as well. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of some of these tools listed here: Remix for network planning, WalkScore, Conveil, and TransTrack. And TransTrack is actually a sponsor of the VTA conference. They are able to make it a lot easier to do your NTD reporting using GTFS. One cool example on the WalkScore piece that I think is just amazing is you can go to WalkScore, look at an area and its public transit network, and you can see apartments that are located along those routes. So it makes for a great way for people who want to live near transit, want to live either with less driving or car free, they can see the options that they have, look at the price of apartments, look at the different things they're looking for in addition to transit amenities. So we're showing here Arlington, Virginia, that as I'm sure a lot of you know, has great transit and a lot of development along those lines. So then building upon that foundation of GTFS, which we've to this point mostly been talking about what we call static GTFS, which is those routes and schedules just as they are without considering kind of vehicle locations, et cetera. But really how this all plays out and interrelates is GTFS enables the reporting that we've talked about. It enables customer information, but then if we combine that with vehicle positions, if you have AVL systems or even a simple GPS, then we can get information to passengers about arrival times, about vehicle locations through GTFS RealTime. And so that in all combines to some great tools for riders to plan trips and make their experience on transit better. Electronic signs, agency websites, and apps, all that can provide that real-time information in combination with schedules. So a little bit more about GTFS RealTime. I'm sure most of you are familiar with these types of apps. Some of these apps are proprietary, but with GTFS RealTime, it's a similar approach and philosophy to GTFS, making it available if it is open data to more than just a specific agency app or a specific provider of apps. It's available on Google Maps, the transit app like we talked about, which are free apps that people use for a variety of systems. So this companion specification, it includes vehicle positions, it includes real-time arrival estimates, and it can even include advisories. So in the case of service disruptions or route detours, you can include that in your information for customers. So some of the benefits that we see for this is both on, again, the side of riders, customers, and agencies themselves. So for riders, the research really has, there's been an extensive literature review that shows that for riders, these benefits include lower wait times because they can time their walk to or bike to the transit stop with when the bus is actually arriving, lower travel times for similar reasons, but also because in real time, they can look at different options that might be arriving sooner than others, as opposed to having a plan when they leave and trying to stick to that plan. They can kind of adapt as they go. And greater peace of mind. Sometimes with the schedule, you don't know if the bus is actually going to arrive, but with that real time, you have better confirmation. For transit agencies, there's a lot of valuable data that you can collect through this, and it makes data reporting easier, greater ridership and satisfaction, and then a return on investment that goes along with that ridership and satisfaction increase. So a few apps that applications of GTFS RealTime that they consume GTFS, and then one of their outputs is this RealTime. So Connections and GMB Synchromatics, those are both going to be exhibitors at the conference. But Swiftly is one that we'd like to highlight because they have really done a lot of innovative things with GTFS RealTime. What I'm showing here is vehicle playback, GPS playback. So this shows, you can look at a history of a bus along a route and see what happened during a particular time, a particular day, etc. And something that actually, in my experience in transit operations, we would use this to kind of verify things that we would hear from customers, like say a customer calls in and says, the bus passed me up, I was there on time, and the driver just ignored me and then passed my stop. We can actually take a look at the GPS playback and we can say, okay, was this driver, was this bus actually there early? Did it depart early? Kind of ground truth what the customer had said, and then deal with the problem from there. So we found that to be a pretty useful application of GTFS real-time. Likewise, on-time performance, which is obviously a very crucial piece of transit operations analysis and system performance. With Swiftly, it makes it a very user-friendly, very nice interface of evaluating how you're doing with on-time performance. And another piece that we'd like to highlight, so Trillium offers a product called Transit Alerts, and this is back to that, the real-time advisories. So you can put in anything, any disruptions or any notices that you would like transit riders to see in real time, and they will, when they do their trip planning, they will have an icon that that will show up, and it'll tell them, for example, in this example, the Baytown trolley service was suspended on these days due to a storm. And so you can do a variety of different types of alerts with this tool, whether it's an increase in service, an upcoming schedule change. You can customize it, and there are different icons and different effects and causes that that produce these icons and these notices that you can just customize the text for. So I'm going to turn it back to Aaron to talk a bit about other GTFS expansions that are built upon that data standard.
Thanks, Jake. So I think you can see that starting from this lightweight format with stops, schedules, routes, and fares, there have been a lot of different kinds of applications built on top of that foundation, and that building is continuing today. So one of those efforts, or one of these companion formats, is called GTFS Flex. You can read more at gtfsflex.com. This is a draft specification that describes deviated fixed route services, DialARide services, and flag stop, that is hail and ride services that previously couldn't be described in GTFS and weren't in trip planners. And so if you have those sorts of services and want a trip planner or other application that includes them, get in touch and we can talk more about software that's being built around GTFS Flex. This is an example of a trip planner in Vermont for the state. This shows DialARide service with a fixed route option. This allows people to discover services that they wouldn't otherwise, would be difficult to discover, and to plan itineraries that otherwise would be difficult to plan. Another such effort is GTFS Ride. GTFS Ride is an effort or a project from the Oregon Department of Transportation, and this adds boarding and alighting data and origin destination data, anonymized origin destination data to the stops and routes in a GTFS data set for internal analysis and consumption. Similarly, if you're interested in emerging practice around GTFS Ride and how it can be used for analysis and reporting, please do get in touch. That concludes our survey of GTFS applications. There's a lot more out there, but there's only so much time for the webinar. So we hope that you have some questions, because we have time for them and we're interested in them.
Okay, well, thank you both for a great informative presentation. We are at the Q&A portion of the webinar, but at this point we don't have any questions submitted. So I will talk for a couple more minutes in the hopes that some questions will start flowing in. I just wanted to mention again our annual conference that's going to be held next Wednesday and Thursday. And what's that? Sorry about that. Our conference will be next week, Wednesday and Thursday at the Renaissance Hotel in Portsmouth. That's May 29th and 30th. And we will have additional informative presentations there with opportunities to network and socialize with your colleagues. And some of the vendors that work with transit agencies to use GTFS and mobile apps will be exhibiting as well, and there will be opportunities for you to meet with them there and see demonstrations of their products. So with that, I will ask Aaron and Jake if they have any concluding remarks, because I don't have any questions popping up.
Yeah, I do have one concluding remark. Maintaining GTFS data is an ongoing process. That is, you don't just release a GTFS data set and then and then be done with it. You have to update it as your schedules are updated and as application needs change. And we talked about the GTFS best practices. If you would like a review of your present data for its suitability in different applications, please do get in touch with us. That's a service that we've offered for various agencies. If any agency has a particular application for GTFS data that we missed, or if you've used one of the applications that we talked about in this presentation, please enter that into the Q&A box, and then we can share those practices with your colleagues.
Okay, still nothing coming up. So Aaron and Jake, I'm just going to remind people that this webinar, the slides will be posted on our website under presentations, webinar, and it will be there for any future reference if people want to check back on your slides or get your contact information or anything else that's been contained here today. So with that, that concludes today's webinar. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and hope to see you next week. Thank you very much.
Thanks all for your time.